This is a Tracking the Tropics update with the certified most accurate weather team at First Coast News.
Well, hello everybody. Morning to you. I am meteorologist Lewis Turner here at First Coast News, and the focus now on Hurricane Milton. There it is. Kind of see, if you look in that top sort of right quadrant, this is what this is. This is an infrared satellite picture. So this isn't radar. All right, radar shows us rain, of course, and that's from ground reading sites generally, though the hurricane hunters can put radar in as well. But generally speaking, we're getting rain returns from radar sites on the ground. Satellites coming up from space, and they use infrared imagery. And where you see the deepest, darkest reds, those are cloud tops up high in the atmosphere, colder cloud tops, and that shows us convection, shows us thunderstorm activity around the center. And when I say look at that top right quadrant of this storm, you can see the eye wall getting developed on a storm that is extremely strong. So forgive me as I look off screen, I'm just kind of reading these specific numbers right now. 125 mile an hour wind, so that makes it a Category 3 storm on the Saffir-Simpson scale. You see right there moving east-southeast at 8. East-southeast, as you look at the eye wall's general motion, you can see that's almost like it's towards Cancun, where there are hurricane warnings right now. That would be for Mexico. This thing is going to make a turn. All right, so we know the turn is coming. It's going to be up and more towards that northeast very soon, later on in the day, but this thing has some strengthening to do as well. So you want to see the cone. There's your cone. There is the current track, actually strengthening maybe even later on today, maybe even later on in the next couple of hours. So we get an 8 o'clock update. Next big update that's going to take all the computer modeling in. So the early morning computer model runs and overnight runs, and it's going to be plugged in from the National Hurricane Center into this forecast cone, and we could get a wiggle, maybe to the north, maybe to the south. But one thing is certain, it seems like this will be strengthening to a Category 4 storm as we get maybe here in the next few hours, maybe even by the 11 o'clock update from the Hurricane Center. This is going to be a really, really strong storm. Will it maintain force strength as it gets to land? Well, Hurricane Center thinks it'll be a 3, but still nonetheless a major hurricane. I have this cone right now. I want you to ask your questions though. Feel free, fire away. I got my diligent crew just off camera here. I got my guy Andy, I got my guy Malcolm, and they're going to be firing off your questions. You'll hear them chiming in as well. And maybe, you know what, honestly, maybe Andy and Malcolm have questions. I'd love to field theirs, and we can get specific. We can get nitty gritty. You can do big picture stuff. You can do little. Do you want to know what the weather's going to be like in St. Augustine? Cool. We'll talk about that, because frankly, St. Augustine's going to have some pretty big impacts, at least with current track. Now, we say all this. Look at that cone, and the cone is pretty wide, right? So specifically talking at landfall. So we're talking about a potential landfall. And remember, with the cone, all it's talking about is the eye wall. It's not talking about the outer bands. It's not talking about the outer edges of the impacts, which will be felt. But it's talking just where landfall from the center of the eye wall is going to take place. And from that cone and Hurricane Center forecasting, very likely it could happen anywhere from Cedar Key up closer to the northern side of the Gulf Coast, all the way down to Naples, Fort Myers, south of there. So there's a lot of wiggle still that's going to be happening within this forecast cone. A further south track, better for us as far as the First Coast in southeast Georgia in local impacts. A little bit further north on the track, and then we're talking about more serious impacts for the First Coast in southeast Georgia. Either way, a major landfalling hurricane in the Tampa Bay area or just a little bit north, we're talking catastrophic and devastating storm surge there. What the cone takes into account, all of these computer modeling, these spaghetti model plots, so you can see how we're dealing with varied results here from as far north as Cedar Key, as far southbound towards that Fort Miles and even Naples area. And what the National Hurricane Center does is take their human knowledge and forecasting abilities, and they've made that centerline path towards Tampa. So we're going to put the European model and the GFS, two popular models that you hear meteorologists online and on television talk about a good bit. GFS, Euro. So Euro's in green, and the tight concentric circles, that's isobars of pressure. Those are your lines of equal pressure. The tighter they are, there is a steeper pressure gradient, meaning pressure goes from high to very, very low in the center in a short amount of time. And that's what causes strong winds, a sharp and steep difference in air pressure. We call that the pressure gradient. The tighter those lines get, those concentric circles, the stronger the storm. And both of those are pretty consistent in intensity. What's different between the Euro and the GFS here, and that what the forecast cone takes into account, you see the Euro in green, a little bit further south of a track, and a little bit faster. The GFS in purple or blue. What is it on your screen? Is it purple? Is it blue? Is it purple, Andy? Thank you. The purple towards a little bit further north of Tampa, that would be a pretty large storm surge situation for Tampa Bay in that area. It'd be stronger impacts for us as well, the GFS, as it would move a little bit further north of the I-4 corridor. So we've got a north I-4 corridor and a south I-4 corridor potential here with this system. This is your Euro when we're factoring in rain now. So those other, the model comparison I just showed you was just pressure. We're going to put the rainfall rates in, and we're looking at Wednesday afternoon into the evening when we'll start to see those first real impacts, those first feeder bands coming in with the rain and the strong wind gusts. This would be for St. Johns County moving into Duval. This would be those evening hours with a landfalling storm south of Tampa, at least according to this piece of information that we use in the toolbox. That would be Wednesday late afternoon into the evening. Now, what's similar, I don't like comparing hurricanes when we're talking about Milton and Helene. What is similar, though, is timing of it being overnight. You know, with Helene, we dealt with a lot of overnight impacts, and it seems like with Milton, we'll be doing the same thing while a lot of folks are sleeping, at least with the current data. If it slows down, it speeds up, that changes. But with current data, this looks like an overnight scenario as we get into Thursday afternoon into Friday, and then some rapid clearing. That's another thing in common, the quick forward speed with this once it does hit land. Here is your GFS model I showed you, a little tighter with the concentric circles, lines closer together, stronger winds, stronger storm according to GFS, and a little bit further north. So this would mean some really big storm surge for Tampa, bigger than what the Euro would project. And look at those impacts here locally. This particular run means we need to be prepared for a larger surge in Duval and even up into Glenn County, Georgia, and then the power outages as well. And those are just two potential runs. And that's why we kind of take your average of that and think about maybe somewhere splitting the difference. When it comes to sustained winds, current look right now, 40 and up for our counties, central St. John's all the way up to Glenn. And really focusing on our coast, but this includes Putnam County as well. We could get 60 sustained, so we're pushing hurricane force sustained winds in southern St. John's, all of Flagler and Putnam County through Palatka, and then we get south towards Volusia County, and they're talking about hurricane force sustained winds. Now, as far as our gusts are concerned, tropical storm force gusts will be felt from Duval County, south, perhaps even Nassau County as well. We're going to get those strong winds, and that equals power outages. We're talking hurricane force gusts, anything south of St. Augustine included, and south when we're talking about 70 mile an hour and up wind gusts there, and that would be Putnam County as well. This would be inland counties impacted by this certainly as well. This graphic is ripped straight from the pages of the National Hurricane Center, and if you want to get super granular and you kind of look, they draw out these squiggly lines as the arrival times of your tropical storm force winds. So looking at Wednesday morning, that arrival is for the Tampa area. By Wednesday evening, you see Wednesday 8 o'clock, you're starting to see some of those tropical storm force winds arrive around the counties of the First Coast, and then later on as we get into the evening hours. So let's go county by county then. I know that's a very popular thing to kind of look at, and one of the most important things is what you can expect where you live, obviously. The timing on all of these county by county forecasts is going to be about the same. We're talking Wednesday late, overnight into Thursday morning. That's going to be the worst of it. Your impacts in Putnam County, 60 mile an hour and up, sustained winds. Gusts over 75. All right, rainfall 6 to 12 inches. This is hurricane-like conditions with the current track in Putnam County. So in Palatka, the surrounding areas, this is a stay indoors situation, but it's also something you need to keep in mind. Mobile homes may not be a safe place to be, considering the likelihood of trees coming down and the strength of those winds. St. Johns County, So it impacts 4 to 6 foot storm surge along the beaches and along downtown St. Augustine, right? So the inlets will be have already had a lot of water pushing in with the nor'easter we've had. So think about more water on top of that. Could get gust 75. This is a stay off the road, stay out of the street scenario there, and stay indoors as much as possible. Duval and Clay, 2 to 4 foot surge, and in Duval, St. Johns County, think the San Marco area, the Riverside area, the places susceptible to getting that street flooding. Knight Drive, all the spots that we see it along the creeks, along the tributaries, Hogan, McCoy, all of those likely to get some of that flooding happening, which could actually put water into homes and businesses, especially if it were on the top end of that 4 foot surge. Rainfall 4 to 8 inches, gust 60 plus there, so prepare for the potential for flooding. Nassau, Glenn, Camden County, 1 to 2 foot surge at this current track. Rainfall 2 to 6, gusts 55 and up. What you need to know, prepare for power outages. And I'm going to say the same thing for Columbia, Baker, Bradford, Union counties, as well as inland southeast Georgia, where the impacts won't be as strong with current forecasting. However, the power outage risk is there. So this is all counties included in this county by county look. Everybody needs to have the batteries, everybody, and know what size batteries for your lanterns, your flashlights, any sort of headlamps you may have. I want all manner of light, because remember, this is overnight. You lose power, you're going to be fumbling over things, and the phone may die, so have ways to have that charged with notifications turned on, for heaven's sakes. That way, if a tornado warning were to pop or any other alert, we'll get it directly to you. So that's kind of my big summation of everything. I want to kind of put the 7-day forecast. A lot of folks kind of can wrap their mind around the work week as a whole. For Monday, Tuesday, we're getting the showers not Milton related, right? So this is nor'easter related, which is putting a lot of water into the rivers, putting a lot more water in the ditches and the retention ponds. Something to keep in mind. The pools, for heaven's sake, you might need to even drain your pool as we get into Wednesday and Thursday. Those are your main weather impact days for our weather impact alerts. Wednesday, specifically honing in on late afternoon, overnight Wednesday into Thursday. So there you go, there you have it. Andy, Malcolm, any questions? Anybody have anything they want to fire off to their old Uncle Lou Turner?
So when you started, you said, hey, even if you want to know how it is in St. Augustine, ask. Well,
yeah.
Someone said, St. Augustine, yes, please.
Oh, really?
Even though I know you just went county.
No, let's do it. I want to go, I'll zoom specifically. I went back to Putnam. Let's zoom right in to St. Johns County. And we can get as granular as you want, but think about, like, not comparing storm to storm, but think of storms past in St. Augustine. Think about Ian and Nicole. Think about the water that put into the Avenida de Menendez, Cathedral Place. They're right at the foot of the Bridge of Lines, and then Davis Shores, right? So with that 4 to 6 foot surge, if we're getting up to that top end with gusts at 75 plus, you're going to have water, and those gusts be coming out of the northeast. These aren't the kind of winds that we saw from Helene, where they were coming gusty and strong, but they were coming out of the south, and they were coming out of the southwest. So that general motion pushes water out of the rivers. With the northeast motion that we're going to get being on this side of the storm, I think our tornado risk is down, but our surge risk goes up. So that's going to potentially put some water on the street there in St. Augustine, and could have that flooding that would put water into businesses. So that's my St. Augustine look. Oh, and listen, you can count on a sailboat or two breaking off from their moorings. That always seems to happen. A sailboat's going to come off their moorings in the intercoastal waterway, and so we're going to need to be careful about that. Anybody else fire anything off, my fellas?
I have a flight, but not me, but
okay.
I have a flight out of Jacksonville at 12:15 p.m. Wednesday. Should I be rebooking?
I hesitate with the airline stuff, because depending on which airline it is, I know some are more apt to cancel on you than others. 12:15 is kind of that leading edge of actually being in the go zone. 12:15, I think you got the green light. I think we're going, but it is never a bad idea to call the nice folks, hit 0 as many times as possible so you can actually talk to an agent and not a robot. But 12:15, with current timing, and of course updates can happen, you should be able to fly out of Jacksonville. But you're pushing it when you get towards 4, 5, 6 o'clock. Good question, like that.
So in Waycross, they're still picking up from Helene.
Right.
And a lot are still without power.
Yes. Brutal. Yeah, so it's at least, and let's zoom over to, I like that. Let's zoom over to Waycross. So Nassau, Glen, Camden, we got Columbia, Baker, Bradford, Union, and here is inland Southeast Georgia. So Ware, Charlton, Brantley, Pierce. So Ware, of course, is Waycross, and then Pierce County would be Blackshear, where obviously dealing with a lot of folks still without power, trees down. So the good thing with all of these impacts is rainfall an inch perhaps, because the difference with Milton and Helene, as we compare and contrast, at this point Milton is a much tighter, much more compact storm. So all the rainfall that built up and combined essentially with a frontal system in an area of low pressure in the upper atmosphere with Helene that caused all the devastation to the north. What I'm seeing with Milton, at least so far, is that's not exactly going to be the story. This is a tight, compact storm, very, very strong, with the worst of it closest to its center. So the further you get out of the way with the current track, and remember, Ware, Pierce, Brantley, Charlton, the further south this is, the better it is going to be for you. But with gusts to 35, if you got your power back, there is possibility that you're going to lose power again briefly. So have the batteries, have the ways to get your devices charged and ready to go. But I do think of all of the areas, you should have the fewest of those main major impacts.
So someone on YouTube asked,
yes.
What are the watches and warnings? I don't know if any are in place right
Yeah,
now.
okay, good question. So what?
Storm and like hurricane warnings.
Yeah, okay, so our watches and warnings right now, I don't have my watch and warning map up because locally there's nothing yet. And when I say locally, wherever you're watching from with YouTube, of course we're Duval County centric, but the first coast of Florida and Southeast Georgia. For our friends though in the Tampa area, I'm going to go all the way back to my forecast cone. If you'll just bear with me, I use my old clicker here that's got to go through about 7 walls at First Coast News to get to my computer, but remote control stuff is just glorious. The hurricane watches are in place right now for everywhere that is on the Gulf Coast within that cone. So remember, a hurricane watch, so that means from Fort Myers to Cedar Key. So and the watch means that hurricane conditions are going to be felt within 48 hours. So that we know that. So somewhere, and the watch is everywhere within that cone on the Gulf Coast of Florida. Nothing yet on the East Coast that we've seen. Now, hurricane warnings, and that'll apply to tropical storm warnings as well. Just note that warning means within 36 hours, that's when we're going to start feeling the either hurricane strength or tropical storm force strength, depending on what kind of warning we've got. But right now, watches, warnings issued for the west coast of Florida. I anticipate, I'm just doing the math roughly in my head. It's Monday. We're going to start feeling those impacts here locally Wednesday evening. So I bet by Monday, late afternoon, evening, we'll start to get the first coast version of the watches issued because we'll be about 48 hours out. Good question.
I know you spoke on flights already, but this guy has a flight Thursday morning scheduled to go to London for the Jags game.
Well, so leaving Jacksonville, connecting up to maybe down Miami and over, or if you're doing the LaGuardia or Newark thing over Thursday morning. Don't love it. I'm gonna be honest, don't love it. I'd go ahead and get on the horn with your agent and let's get you Thursday afternoon. Let's get you bumped up to first class. Let's get business class at least.
How was Sean's playing? Get him on Sean Connery.
Absolutely. Got to think about what the boys are going to be doing as far as travel too. You got to think about when are they going to head. They need to go ahead and get there now, so they're not worried about anything. Make sure the houses are boarded up and everything, and get over there as soon as possible. But as far as our local trips, that's a great question. People are trying to get to London. Try to do it later Thursday because Thursday morning is going to be a little iffy. The worst of our stuff is out of here Thursday by noon, but it might be a little bouncy come Thursday morning.
And I'll leave you with this one.
Leave us with this.
Should Jacksonville be worried since we are on the left side of the storm, which doesn't happen often?
Okay, good question. So the left side of the storm, I like this graphic for it. And by the way, you were hearing the voice of Andy and Malcolm as well a little bit earlier there. So thanks guys for the questions. Closing with this. Being on the left side of the storm is especially interesting For us, it's not, okay, so we talk about the right side of the storm being the dirty side. The right side of the storm is where you get the potential for tornado spin-ups. With this particular orientation being on the left side of the system, remember everything flows counterclockwise around areas of low pressure, which is what a hurricane is. A hurricane is just a tight, strong area of low pressure, right? So you get the counterclockwise flow. Being on the left side means we're getting the northeast winds, which means we're getting the onshore flow pushing that water, so the potential for surge. A much different kind of surge than what you get with the onshore direct landfalling hit that you would get, say for instance in Tampa. Being on the front right side, so that front right quadrant, the worst possible side to be on a direct landfalling system. With this being on this left side, with this northeast, that's what brings in the greater potential as opposed to what we saw with Helene of actually seeing the surge. And that's got us kind of thinking about that downtown Jacksonville. When you get upwards of 4 feet, you're talking about flooding up into San Marco, up into the communities along McCoy's, Hogan Creek, and that means water potentially up into businesses and up into homes as well. So yeah, you're right. This harkens back a little, not exactly. So I hesitate to make direct comparisons, but just for the sake of the fact that, I mean, if you're Googling Hurricane Charlie, for instance, back in 2004, you would note that there was a path that took a storm essentially right up the gut here, right over Interstate 4. And Charlie, while it took a little bit more northern path, we felt the impacts being on that left side. So, some things to draw references from, but if modeling takes this again a little bit further south because of how tight this storm is and how small it is relative to Helene, maybe the impacts wouldn't be as bad for us, again, the further south. I don't hopecast. I don't have that luxury. But if you're hoping at home and rooting for a specific scenario, you don't want anyone to get the worst of this. But for the First Coast, a further south track is going to be better for them, and a further, just a little bit tick of a further south, it would be a little bit better for Tampa and that surrounding area as well. I think one way or the other, they're going to get a very, very big surge. But if they catch that northeastern quadrant, that front right, it's going to be absolutely devastating. So things to watch, thoughts and prayers, of course, with anybody and everybody in the path of this one, because it's going to be big and strong, a major storm. And this is the type of stuff when we talk about movie level storms, this is that. So anyway, unless my friends have any other questions for me, no? All right, for Andy, for Malcolm, for the entire web department, the entire meteorological team, man, I almost nailed the landing. I'm Lewis Turner. Y'all have a great day. We'll be back a little bit later.